Thank you so much. I'm Samir Gadkari. I'm the president of the Institute for College Access and Success, or TICAS. We work to advance college affordability, accountability, and preventing fraud and abuse in the higher education sector, and equity. And one of the issues that we've had the pleasure of working on for a long time is expanding Pell Grants and the Double Pell campaign. And I'm excited today, on behalf of TICAS and our honorary co-host, Senate Health Committee Chair Patty Murray, to welcome you to today's event celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Pell Grant program. It's my privilege to introduce our first speaker, Senator Jack Reed. Upon graduation from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1971, Senator Reed earned a degree from the JFK School of Government. He qualified as a U.S. Army Ranger and commanded paratroopers in the 82nd Airborne Division. After 8 years of active duty service, Senator Reed attended Harvard Law School. After practicing law in Washington, D.C. and Rhode Island, Senator Reed was elected in 1996 to succeed Senator Claiborne Pell as Rhode Island's 46th U.S. Senator. During his time in the Senate and as a member of the Health Committee and as a senior appropriator, Senator Reed has been a leading voice on college affordability and student loan debt issues, and a strong advocate for students and consumers. He helped write laws preventing interest rate increases on new loans for millions of college students. He fought efforts to increase student borrowing costs. He recently proposed a student loan borrower's Bill of Rights and has offered legislation to reform disclosure and servicing standards for both federal and private student loans. He also helped to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and to give American families the tools they need to fight unfair and abusive financial products and services. Senator Reed has been a tireless champion for the Pell Grant program, including through his leadership on the Pell Grant Preservation and Expansion Act of 2021, which would double the maximum award and make other key investments in the Pell program. Senator Reed currently serves on the Senate Appropriations Committee, the Armed Services Committee, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, and Select Committee on Intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us today, Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. I also want to thank TICAS for their valuable research, for their advocacy. It's absolutely critical to our continued efforts to improve access to higher education, affordable access to higher education. I'd also like to recognize Michelle Cooper, who's here today. Michelle is a true expert in higher education opportunity and her service at the Department of Education. And I also want to recognize Grace, who is the prettiest lady here, without a doubt. Okay, take my word. Okay. I also recognize Sarah Flanagan. Sarah is one of the Pell people. When I was a rookie member of Congress, and I didn't know what to do, I said, Sarah, and she'd tell me. Now more Flanagan was that woman. Let me also thank the panelists. Your input today in this dialogue is going to be very, very helpful for all of us. The Pell Grant's about expanding opportunity through post-secondary education, and it was a way to build for the future, and that is what this organization and this effort represents. One of the things that, as I got to know Senator Pell, that struck me, and it's an insight that I have, and I'll share it with you, is that he came from privilege. He had no need to borrow money to go to college, etc. His path was a fairly smooth one. So at the outbreak of World War II, instead of getting a staff job someplace here in DC, etc., he joined the Coast Guard as an enlisted person and was a cook, going across the North Atlantic in dangerous countries to get supplies to Europe. And while he was there, he, I think, recognized the incredible talent of lots of folks that could never go to college because they just didn't have the money. And I think that helped start his sort of sense of, we could do so much for these people and they could do so much for America. And that exposure, I think, was key to his instincts to do what he did, and he did it so well. Now, I've had the privilege of being with Senator Tyler Cohen. Let me just say, if you really want to feel good, if you really want to just bask in the applause and the acclaim of everyone, complete just adoration, do what I do or what I did. Walk in a parade next to Playboy and Pell and pretend they're sure of you. It's fun. He's beloved back in Rhode Island. And he believed, as you all know, and as you believe, in the power of education to transform individuals, communities, and nations. You know, if you think back of our great progress, you know, the Silicon Valley, et cetera, you know, it started probably with the GI Bill. And then Senator Pell saw that and expanded it to the whole youthful population of the country, and not the youthful population. And that's the reason we are advanced in education, in research, in all these things. He built a very strong America for us. 50 years ago, Senator Pell took the floor and said the signing of his higher education bill that created what would become known as the Pell Grant was the most memorable event in his life. And despite the rather nondescript title, it was called the Education Amendments of 1972. It represented a giant step forward. The law included Title IX, which is prohibiting gender discrimination, which has changed the face of the better of education and opportunity in this country. And it established a basic educational opportunity grant, or BO, now known as the Pell Grant. And Senator Pell liked to joke, it was named the Pell Grant because there was no Senator B.O. The Pell Grant is a success story, unmitigated success. Because of the Pell Grant, over 80 million students and counting have been able to attend college. In 1972, before the Pell Grant, less than half of high school graduates immediately enrolled in college. Today, 2/3 make that transition. Since the establishment of the Pell Grant, the percentage of people ages 25 to 30 with a bachelor's degree has doubled. We have much more educated, period, citizenry than we would have without the Pell Grant. Yet we can't take this for granted. Just when a post-secondary credential is so necessary, just to be able to move along, to be competitive with your contemporaries, we have to find more ways to make college enrollment more affordable. We're in affordability crisis. Last evening, I was chatting with someone. His daughter is attending Michigan State, as an out-of-state student, tuition $77,000, which I wince because I have a 15-year-old daughter. The tuition will be about $150,000. So we are all in this together. And we've got to get back on track. The Pell Grant remains a cornerstone of needs-based aid, but it hasn't kept up with the rising cost of college. There was a time when the Pell Grant covered 3/4 of the cost of a public four-year college. Today, it covers less than 1/3. So it's time to restore the promise of the Pell Grant, and we need to double it. Quite frankly, we need to double the grant, get this money in the hands of Americans all over this country, and invest in them and invest in our country. We also need states and institutions to step up. It's the sheer responsibility of affordability. And I introduced a bipartisan partnership for affordability and Success Act with Senator Collins of Maine, my friend, to renew the federal-state partnership. We used to have a situation where we would put money up and the states would have to match it, and then it would go out to deserving students. That got lost in the shuffle a few years ago. We have to restore that too. And also we have to hold institutions of higher education responsible. And what I've tried to do is look at default rates, particularly in context of these private colleges. And if you have a very high default rate, that means a couple of things. You're not preparing your students very well for the job market, or you're just simply using them as a way to grab Pell Grants and then run off into the woods. We've got to stop that too. And we've got to provide more opportunities for those people willing to serve their country. That's why I have an Action for National Service Act, which would increase the educational award to the equivalent of 4 years of tuition fees at a public college in exchange for 2 years of service to the AmeriCorps or other national service programs. In fact, again, I think that would have a multiplier effect, not just educating people, but exposing people to public service and improving their communities. So we have to stay true to Senator Pell's legacy, and that needs reduce dramatically the reliance on loans, and make it clear that education is a question of talent and initiative and efforts and desire, not just what's in the bank account. Senator Pell sort of foresaw what was coming to us. In 1995, his last term in the Senate, he took the floor and won. Every day, families are making decisions about sending their children to college. Certainly one of, if not the major obstacle they face, is how to pay for college. The loan is their last resort. It provides the extra but necessary money they must have after exhausting their own resources and obtaining any grants for which their children might be eligible. Increasing the amount that children owe after graduation may well place the dream of a college education beyond their reach. That, to my mind, would be a tragedy of truly immense proportions. And we're witnessing the prelude to such a tragedy now, but we still have time to act. It's our responsibility to build on Senator Pell's legacy. And so let us celebrate 50 years of Pell Grant and the intelligence and foresight of Senator Claiborne Pell by committing to double that grant and do our part to achieve Senator Pell's legacy. Education accessible for all, affordable for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Pell, or Senator Reed. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Michelle Asha Cooper, who currently serves as the Acting Assistant Secretary for Postsecondary Education and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Higher Education Programs at the U.S. Department of Education. In those roles, she leads higher education's pandemic recovery efforts by managing $76 billion in pandemic aid for students and institutions, oversees a $3 billion grant-making portfolio that supports programs and builds capacity at colleges and universities, including those that serve large numbers of under-resourced students, promotes innovations that help to increase college completion, quality, and value, enhances students and faculty global competencies and awareness, and advances reforms that drive social and economic mobility for American students. Dr. Cooper brings more than 20 years of experience to this work. Most recently, she served as the president and CEO of the Institute for Higher Education Policy, where she managed the organization's expansive research portfolio and advocacy agenda. She's also held leadership positions at the Advisory Committee on Student Financial Assistance at the U.S. Department of Education, the Association of American Colleges and Universities, the Council for Independent Colleges at King's College. A recognized advocate for racial and economic equity, experienced practitioner and demonstrated leader, Dr. Cooper is a champion of access and success for all students in higher education. Thank you so much for being with us today, Michelle.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Samir, for the introduction and the invitation to join you all for this really special day. I want to thank you and TICAS for organizing this event, but also want to just really acknowledge Senator Reed and the important work that he has played in helping to keep us all focused on college affordability for the last several years. And like he did as well, I want to give a special acknowledgement to Sarah Flanagan. When I moved to DC, I was told that Sarah was the person that I needed to know in order to know anything about financial aid. And I, you know, I've been here now for a while, and that still remains to be true. And to Maura, thank you, Maura, for holding things down here on the Hill for so many years. You have been a champion as well. And when I also acknowledge my daughter, Senator Reed talked about my daughter, but she's standing here in the hallway looking at me, so I'm a little nervous because she's so she's happy to be here. This is her first trip to the Capitol, so she's really happy. So this is a special day for her too. it has been 50 years since the Pell Grant made higher education possible for so many of our nation's students, including for people like me and several others like you who are probably in the audience today. Many years ago, when I was first introduced to DC, I came to DSC as a summer intern. Any summer interns in the room? Yes, lots of summer interns in the room. So when I first came to DC as a summer intern, I had the opportunity to attend a breakfast hosted in the Capitol where Senator Pell was the speaker. And at the time, I just remember being sort of starstruck. I was in awe that someone had a grant program named after them. And although at the time I realized the importance of that encounter, I didn't fully understand the magnitude of it until many, many years later. And today I'm really grateful for the gift that Senator Pell has given to others and to me, and so students from all low-income and working-class families to make the college dream come true. The Pell Grant has not only changed the lives of generations of people, it has helped college be affordable and attainable for them as well. And during the grant's first year in 1972, the maximum Pell Grant award was $452. And that covered all of the students' tuition. Because at that time, the average cost of tuition and fees was $500. $500. $500. Unfortunately, the Pell Grant no longer covers the majority of tuition at four-year institutions. We heard Senator Reed give us some statistics. And everyone in this room has heard those statistics before. We know that the purchasing power of the Pell Grant has not been sustained. And for many students, that now means that they have to dig deep into their family's pockets. And when those pockets run dry, they have to take out loans. And we certainly know what effect that has on students' ability to matriculate into college. So today, as the Pell Grant turns 50, there has never been a more important time to really think about what is happening in higher education. We know that in part due to the pandemic, we have seen declining enrollments for lots of students. Nearly 1 million students have not returned to higher education after the pandemic. And as it has been for so many decades, the Pell Grant can really help those students. It can be a beacon for encouraging people to pursue their education. It can be a beacon for making sure that they have the funds available. And it can give so many students that a chance of attaining a piece of the American dream. The Pell Grant is crucial for our students, especially those from low income and working class backgrounds, especially those from Black and brown communities for whom, for many, as a result of discrimination and inequities built into our country's systems and infrastructure, they are negatively impacted by the racial wealth gap. Some people over the years have liked to argue with me about the effectiveness of Pell. Well, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, pretty candid. I think that's a really silly argument. I really do. I think it's very silly because the impact of the Pell Grant is actually, to me, indisputable. Think about what would happen if we did not have Pell Grants. Think about what would happen to community colleges. Who would go? Think about what would happen to Hispanic serving institutions. Think about what would happen to tribal colleges. And we're worried about 1 million students lost due to the pandemic. Take the Pell Grant away, and really we'll see what would happen. So some colleges, you know, when you think about HBCUs alone, more than 70% of their students are Pell eligible students. For if it had not been for the Pell Grant, not only would these students be locked out, they'd be priced out. And so today, as we celebrate the critical role that the Pell Grant has played in American higher education, it is important not to forget the necessity of increasing its purchasing power today. In doing so, it will not make more students be locked and priced out of higher education. And so I'm very proud of the work that we are doing in the Biden-Harris administration to uplift the Pell Grant program. President Biden desires that we double the Pell Grant program by 2029. We are pleased that we received a $400 increase in the recent omnibus, but that's not quite yet double. We consider that a down payment towards achieving our goal. And in the FY 2023 budget proposal, we are proposing a maximum increase of $1,775. That's $1,775 to the Pell Grant program, which would be the single largest bump in the programs since its creation. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being the champions of this program that I know you all are. Thank you for joining in this really special celebration. Thank you for organizations like TICAS who continue to shine a light on the importance of Pell. And I also see Barbara here, Barbara from NICU. NICU comes to the department and continues to tell Secretary Cardona just how important these grants are for students. I hope that all of you share those stories. I hope all of you would continue to be advocates for this program, because without it, what would happen? That's not a world, that's not a higher education we even dare here to dream about. You know, the sense of awe and amazement that I felt when I saw Senator Pell many summers ago, I will not say how many summers ago, but it was a lot. It's the same way I feel when I look out at your faces right now. I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for the work that you all are doing. You give me hope in the future of higher education, of American higher education. So just want to say thank you, all of you. Thank you, TICAS. Thank you, NICU. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Maura and Senator Reed. Let's keep at it, because there is a future generation of students, just like the ones who are my kids' age, who will need the Pell Grant to make sure that higher education is not only possible, but is attainable and will help their dreams to come true. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Olivia Sanchez. I write about higher education at the Hechinger Report. We focus on the issues of inequality and innovation, from early childhood care to career and technical training, adult education, and so on. I'm going to moderate a discussion that I think that you all are curious to hear with students who have benefited from the Pell Grant. So I think that we can just jump in. This is why we're here. If you guys want to come up and we can get started. So we mostly today have with us recent grads. Isabella is our only still current student. She is a rising junior at UC Berkeley, studying legal studies and political economy. Michelle is a recent grad from Trinity, and Amanda just graduated from SUNY Buffalo, and Honor from Northern Virginia just graduated from VCU with a major in biology, and we also have Javier with us. I think that we will let the students introduce themselves and get started with our conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabella Romo. I use your pronouns. I'm a rising junior at UC Berkeley studying legal studies and political economy with a minor in human rights. I'm originally from Gilroy, California, which is just an hour and a half south of Berkeley, so I'm happy to be a Bay Area local. And this summer I'm living here in DC as an intern at the Department of Education. So the Pell Grant is very special to me and the work that I'm doing on a daily basis. But at school, I'm happy to be involved as an elected senator in our student government, and UC Berkeley's student government is one of the most prolific in the country. So it's been an honor to serve students there and advocate for their needs, and one of them being financial aid and greater access to educational resources and financial resources to make sure that they're able to accomplish their goals and thrive in an environment that they might have goals in, such as higher education. So I'm happy to be here today as a Pell Grant recipient, a proud Pell Grant recipient, to speak about my experiences with that and why it's been so important to my experience as a student.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Vasquez, and as of a few weeks ago, I'm a proud graduate of Trinity Washington University with a major in political science and double minors in business administration and data analytics. I'm super excited to be here. Just a little bit about me. When I first heard the word college, it wasn't at a young age. I was actually a sophomore in high school when a group of upperclassmen asked me what college you want to go to. And I said, what's college? And so I had to do a Google search about what college was, and was surprised to learn that I could actually continue my education after that. But I'm super excited to be here. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa, Student Government Council President, participated a lot in campus activities, and I received a full-time offer to work at Accenture in consulting upon graduation. I credit the Pell Grant movement a lot because it motivated me to start a capital fundraising campaign at my university, the first that our campus has had, run by students. It's called the Help a Sister Out Fund, and our goal is to address inequity in higher education by supporting students and assisting in with financial resources for textbooks, for food, for expenses, anything that students may face. So I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to this conference.
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good. All right. I'm Amanda Haley. I'm initially from Huntington Beach, California, but a few years ago I moved to Buffalo, New York, to get support from my brother who was going to medical school, and my mom, she didn't have any money. So when I grew up, I thought that, you know, I had a college fund. Most kids are like, okay, yeah, you have a college fund. You'll be fine. So in high school, I was like, do I want to go? I applied to SUNY Buffalo State College, and I happened to get in. And that was when I realized that I had no money to go to college. So that's when I was just like, do I even want to go? I'm gonna have to take out loans. And then I heard about the Pell Grant, and the Pell Grant allowed me to apply to college, get financial aid, and actually go. And when I went to SUNY Buffalo State, that's where I just graduated from, I was able to become a president of an org. I was a peer mentor, and I was able to get the full college experience. Well, without the extra aid, I wouldn't have. So.
Hey everyone, my name's Honor. Pronouns are he, him. I have had the privilege of just graduating from Virginia Commonwealth University in this May in biology. I am very grateful for the Pell Grant, as it is the reason that I was able to attend school and kickstarted my journey into what hopefully will be an MD Ph.D. I spent my first few years were pretty standard. My first year was pretty standard. I had a little bit of parent support. Pell helped a lot, and then after that, things between me and my family got very tough. So I became an independent. They were very abusive, so I ended up being completely on my own throughout COVID, and almost dropped out multiple times had it not been for the Pell Grant and the mentors that it put me in contact with. So I also wanted to talk to all of you today about mentorship and how important it is that students are funded to get to the point where they can reach out to those people that are going to be their advocates and supports. I've been very lucky to co-chair the SHEV Student Advisory Council, the State Council of Higher Education of Virginia. I worked as a supplemental instruction leader at VCUs, tutoring groups of 30 in various subjects. I've also spent 4 years in biomedical research.
Hi everybody, my name is Javier Perez. I'm a fifth-year student at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm really excited to be here today and talk about the Pell Grant experience, and especially from a first-generation student, first generation American. I'm talking about that kind of process going from immigrant parents, people who've never graduated college, people who never attended college before. The only person in my family to do that was my mother before dropping out to have me. And so to kind of have that experience and be growing up around people who had joined the military in order to get a career and learn the skills to continue and join the workforce, and then to turn that into having their son go into biomedical engineering and work in research and be able to be here in DC today, some place that my family has never been before. It's really honorable, and I really appreciate the Pell Grant for giving me that opportunity to come here and do that. And without it, I don't know where I would be. I'd be following the same kind of cycle that the rest of my family was going through prior. So during COVID, I actually had to work 2 different jobs. I worked the night shift at LabCorp, testing data specimens, and it was super difficult to manage a 9 to 5 a.m. schedule and then go home and join clubs and do work. And I had to actually go part-time in the middle of that process just because it was very difficult to afford rent, pay for, my college education at the same time. And without Pell, I don't know if I'd be one of those statistics without a retention rate, not coming back to school like so many other students have. So I'm very grateful for the Pell, and I'm really grateful to be here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really struck by something that you said, Michelle, what's college? And I think it would be good to start a conversation. I'm curious what your education about college looked like. How did you learn about college? How did you learn how you're going to pay for college? Michelle, if you're willing to start and share a little bit more about from that initial Googling, what is college? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I come from, my family comes from an immigrant background. They knew nothing about college. I thought that once high school ended, that was it. And so when I was asked by these high school seniors, upperclassmen, what college are you going to? I literally had to do a Google search because I didn't know what that was. And so I raised the idea to my family, and they genuinely supported me. But the only problem was, how would we pay for college? College in America is incredibly expensive and only growing. And that doesn't even include the cost for books and other expenses, transportation and all of that. So I literally had to, do Google research, had to create little Excel sheets to kind of really inform myself. But when I heard about the Pell Grant program, I think that really relieved me because it was guaranteed income towards my education. So I'm super thankful for that.
Thank you. Amanda, are you willing to share a little bit more about what your education about college looked like?
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't know how the process worked. I didn't realize how expensive it was. I didn't know how financial aid worked. I didn't know that you could get financial aid. So I went to one of those college fairs at school, and then I saw two schools that I really liked. That was just close and small and not too expensive because I knew I didn't have any money. So that's pretty much, I looked up, Googled, how can I get financial aid? My mom assisted me with the financial aid process, as well as my brother. Luckily, my brother, he went to medical school and college and everything, so I had him to help me out. But yeah.
Javier, Honor, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So, interestingly enough, my when I was growing up, none of my family actually went to college, so I thought I was going to follow that same footstep and go into the military. But I always had my grandfather worked at Columbia University as a janitor, and so I always had a Columbia gear all the time, and I didn't realize how special that kind of was. I thought it was just a regular school, and I always thought, like, I'm going to go to Columbia one day, just because I was raised with that. And so as growing up, that's kind of my only idea of what going to college really was, just wearing a sweatshirt and a drawstring bag. And then realizing my father and my mother both really pushed on me, like, you need to go to college. We're not doing the HVAC and military thing anymore. You want to make sure that you have an education. And they really pushed that on me. But when it became extremely difficult, because when we started looking at different colleges to actually attend, a lot of the schools that I really wanted to go to were private institutions where they were at state. And then I realized that just wasn't an option for somebody like me in my situation. That's why I'm really grateful for Rutgers and State University and really helped me for affordability wise. But I realized during COVID and having these experiences and realizing, wow, this is what's supposed to be an affordable college, is still very so difficult, and I have to work full time. And both of my parents, even though divorced, are really trying to help me with that process. And yet I could only imagine if I attended a private university and I had to transfer out, or I went to an out-of-state school like so many students do, or international students experience. And so to have that kind of opportunity and be lucky enough to make the decision that I did, I don't know how so many other students are able to make a different decision and go to the university they really want to without that affordability option there.
Thank you. Honor, Isabella, you want to talk about how you learned about college and how you learned about how to pay for college?
Sure, yeah. For me as well, I knew early on I wanted to go to medical school, but all I knew was you spend a couple of years at school and then you come out a doctor. I didn't know any of what it meant to go in, what the training was like. There were never, my parents are immigrants, so I'm first generation American. And there was never a conversation with me or with my parents about finances, about what college looked like. So I had to figure all that out during the application process. And theoretically they were a middle class family, but I was cut out of their finances, so I was almost from the start left on my own. So there was one program at VCU called the acceleration program. So they actually onboarded you the summer before you came on, and it was for a month. Your food and housing was paid for, and that is probably one of the only reasons that I've been able to complete college, because I was Pell eligible, so I got into that program. And then they showed me around, connected with mentors, and then I was able to start asking questions to people and learn about what the process looked like.
Yeah, and just to close this off, you know, like some of my peers, I'm also a first generation American, and so luckily my parents did attend college near their hometowns, and they kind of had an idea of what it meant to go to college, but not so much how to pay for it because they had to work to put themselves through college. And so as the oldest of four, you know, I have three younger siblings who also want to go to college, and I knew that as the first to go to college, I did not want to put the burden on my parents to pay for mine in addition to my siblings, and because that is a hefty price. And I go to a public institution, and it is also a hefty price, even though it is not the most expensive to attend here in our country. And so I didn't even know there was such thing as a Pell Grant when I was applying to college. I wanted to keep my options open, so I applied to as many scholarships as I could to try to, you know, increase the amount of aid that I would have once I got to college. And luckily, with everything that I got from local scholarships in my local community, in my hometown, and with government aid, I have not been able to stress about paying for college and for other resources that I might need as a college student, which has allowed me to pursue other goals and activities as a college student. So I'm very grateful that, you know, eventually I learned about the Pell Grant, whether it was through, you know, Google searching it or just other peers and mentors that I had as a high school student. But it definitely was a difficult journey just to figure out what resources I even had available to me.
Thank you. So with the understanding that all of you had the pandemic as a backdrop for at least some of your college, I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about what the biggest roadblocks and challenges were during your undergrad experience, and what exactly helped you overcome those and continue in school. Whoever wants to go first.
I guess on the note that I just left off on, you know, I guess I would just like to reiterate that we often don't even know what types of financial aid resources are available to us. And so when I started school, it was actually 2020, the pandemic year, and I moved to UC Berkeley during the pandemic. I lived alone in a dorm, and everything was virtual, so I didn't get to really interact with a lot of upperclassmen at my school and figure out how to navigate all the different resources and opportunities that were suddenly made available to me because I was a student at this institution. And so I think just the fact that, you know, I was the first of my siblings to go to a four-year university and to really have to figure out how to pay for college without depending on my parents to do so. It was difficult without having so many mentors as I do now to realize what to take advantage of as a college student.
I would also just add on, I mean, when I served as student government council president on campus, I met with a lot of students, and a lot of my peers had to make physical, spiritual, and financial sacrifices to be able to go to college. Many of my peers, they would take on full-time jobs with 18 academic credits. They would have to take on part-time jobs. Many of them, you know, couldn't even go to events on campus or take a full advantage of the entire college experience that you can get simply because they were working full-time. Others were mothers, others were commuters and who had to pay a lot for transportation. And as we know, gas prices are going up. So that's another problem that's going on. But I mean, as commuters as well, you know, we have a lot of expenses. And so I think that many of the students across the entire country, we have a lot of expenses that are just, you know, a huge burden for us throughout our college experience.
I would say at the beginning of the pandemic, right before it started, I was working 3 jobs. I was just in an org, and that was like the start of the org, and we were playing a pageant and everything was so exciting. But at the same time, I was working 3 jobs on top of that, doing school, trying to, you know, focus on my mental health, and it was really hard. And the pandemic I saw as a blessing in disguise, but also a huge hassle, because during that time, like I said, 3 jobs org, everything dropped. So the first 2 months I was able to relax and, you know, just focus on school. So it was nice, but then returning back, being a part of the student government and seeing everything, the lack of student engagement, even as becoming a peer mentor and working with freshman students, a lot of them just said like, they don't want to go to school. They didn't like, due to the pandemic and everything else going on, like everything is so different. So throughout college, I would say like the hardest thing is being able to afford to live on top of being able to have a life with your friends, experience college, get a good education, making sure that your grades are okay. I lived by myself ever since I was 17, so it's been a struggle to keep that balance life. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that one thing I'd add is when with institution, with education in college, it's not just about learning; it's about being able to, like we've been saying, being able to live on your own, pay for your tuition, your bills. I worked 2 jobs as well, and one way I was able to like provide for housing is through this Pell Grant paid for tuition, and I had to pay for education-based scholarships. So I actually over COVID, I was homeless, and then I almost dropped out because I didn't think I could bear like tuition on top of the cost of daily living. But because of my mentors and because knowing that I had financial aid to help keep me in school, I was able to continue and pay for my bills and be able to stay in school and complete on time.
Yeah, another major issue was that it was pretty ironic seeing a lot of people kind of be really happy about transitioning with the ease of in COVID, being able to stay in bed all day and just open up your laptop. And it was really difficult because within the first month of the pandemic, actually my laptop broke. And so I was like, well, I can't just afford a new working laptop. My university luckily had a program where they gave out free laptops. And it realized that those are not very quality free laptops. Those are laptops that it took me 20 minutes to log into a Zoom and missing class, missing meetings, etc. And it wasn't until 8 months into the pandemic that I actually got a regular working laptop and can have that experience. And so there are different levels to how the pandemic affected people. A lot of people can talk about the ease of it and the how we kind of wish online was still the way we were going. But for me, changing from in-person to online was one of the most difficult experiences. I would have never thought I would be graduating at a different date than what I originally thought going in. And so to have that kind of forced upon me because of financial burdens and just different logistical problems at the time caused by the pandemic and others, having to work at Amazon and LabCorp to just afford my rent. That was something that I'm really grateful because without Pell Grant, I don't even know if doing that was something I can continue, and bounce back from and afford a laptop after. So that's kind of the experience there.
Thank you. I think that this conversation about all of the other burdens besides just, paying the college, the tuition bill is really valuable. And I'm hoping that we can hear from you what you think that decision makers in higher ed need to know about what it means to be a student today. Whether that's, more conversation about the financial burdens and other factors that, I don't know because I'm not a student right now. I think that in higher ed, we want to help students and we love to talk about students, and this is our chance to hear, what do they need to know? You have a captive audience here, so yeah.
I think we need to know, I think lawmakers and people that represent us need to know that students are going through either similar or worse problems that people who are graduated in 1970 and prior and went to college and stuff like that. We're experiencing those exact same problems. We are still having to work. We are still having to pay our rent and do that with inflated costs on top of it and with so much extra. And it feels sometimes that I think that at least our generation, current students get talked about as very entitled, and that a lot of things come easier to us now than prior. And I think that's a really wide generalization for so many students that don't fall into that perfect category of an entitled category. And I think there's so many people, including in stage here and everybody and a lot of people in the crowd, that don't fall into that category, and it's really inaccurate generalization. So many of us work, so many come from immigrant backgrounds, so many are first generation students, and we still need that support and help because like Senator Reed said before, we're going from a Pell Grant helping afford 70% of a college tuition of a four-year institution to less than 30 now. And so that's something where I think we need more compassion and empathy towards students today.
I completely agree. I just want to add on as well. Colleges, when there's been debates about whether virtual learning or in-person learning, like whether in-person education is even worth the cost when you can get an education from your bed or your couch. But we all know that with mentorship, with in-person experience and the level of work preparation you get from an in-person education, you're far better set up to succeed in the workforce. That said, when we're preparing students in person with classes, with housing, with food and all of that, we're responsible for providing students healthcare in terms of like easy, accessible, affordable like student health services and mental health. That's something that's really important. That I think institutions are understandably hesitant to accept or hesitant to really embrace. But I think if you don't have access to like somewhat affordable housing, and if you don't have access to like regular food, then your education is of far concern. So it's very important that we see this holistically.
Yeah, and I'll just add, as one of the only students on this panel who is still actively in school, I have seen how the incoming classes have been severely impacted by the pandemic. As high school students, they're transitioning to being in person in college for the first time, and they have to learn how to adapt to taking in-person college classes. And students like myself who started college during the pandemic, it's been difficult for us to make that transition to now experiencing college fully in person. And so we're experiencing an even greater amount of challenges and struggles as college students today than many 50 years ago when the Pell Grant was first established. And we've heard a lot about the purchasing power. It does not have the same purchasing power today as it once did. And so we see public institutions being unaffordable for students. So what about those who have to go to private institutions? And we want to make sure that we are expanding the eligibility and also doubling the Pell to make sure that students, no matter what institution they go to, no matter what background they come from, are able to afford their education and take advantage of all the opportunities that they have available to them at their institutions as college students. Being able to move to DC to intern for the summer without having to worry about saving money to pay for their tuition once the fall comes. These are important experiences for college students, and it's even more difficult for them to tap into them and to really develop and achieve their goals if they don't have access to financial aid.
I would just add on, a lot of the universities, especially Hispanic serving institutions, I speak from Trinity Washington University. One of the reasons I chose this university was because it was the cheapest option that I had, and I literally applied to over 130 scholarships, and with all of the few scholarships I did receive and the Pell Grant, of course, I was able to make sure that I would be able to, fully almost support my tuition at Trinity. But when I actually met with the president of my university, and she discussed with me transparently about the budget and the financial aid package that they gave me as well. She told me frankly that it was just discounted tuition, that our universities sometimes just have to make those sacrifices of giving us discounted tuition in order to be able to pay for college. And so it doesn't really benefit them. It's actually, hurting them a bit. But a lot of our universities have to make huge cuts in order to be able to ensure that students, especially minorities, are able to go to college. And so I think that doubling the Pell Grant program is like super helpful, especially for universities who still really need that funding and sourcing from.
To piggyback off what she said, definitely the fact that I didn't get as much money that I anticipated affected which college that I wanted to go to. Looking back now as a college graduate, I wish I went to an HBCU. I wish I got that experience. I wish that I was able to be a part of more clubs. I wish that I was more involved on campus, but I wasn't allowed to because I had to work. I still have loans to pay off, even though I was working the whole time, and that's very stressful. So definitely increasing the aid can expand and enhance everyone's experience for the better, because like she said, these are different experiences that are going to be monumental for our life and that will help us in our future careers.
Thank you guys so much. I think that we'll move to questions from you all if you have some, and we can hear more from our panelists. If we have questions. Yes, I think we have one. I'm gonna stand up. I think that's better. I think we have one in the back. I see a hand.
I'm Frank Ballman with, I work for New York State know, one of you works for or worked for Chev, and one of you wants to Buffalo. I'm curious if you have any, you know, if you could talk about your experience getting state grants. Pell is 26 billion a year. State grants about 13 billion a year. So I'm curious if Buffalo student got a cap grant in New York, you know, what Chev could help you as well.
I'm going to repeat that. It was just to make sure we're all on the same page. So we are curious if you are able to, specifically Amanda, able to share any experience you had with state grants, and for the others, whether state grants helped you fund your education.
I love TAP. During that time, like I took out loans, but TAP and Pell and the loans allowed me, I would have to take out loans so I can like pay my rent and be able to, you know, eat. So during October or like February, everyone in my class, we'd all be excited. We're like, all right, it's we're getting our student like loans back, like our checks back. So it definitely helped. I did not receive the aid from Pell or TAP combined. Like I needed both of them, and I still owe $13,000 in loans, and that might not seem a lot to some people, but that's a lot for a 21-year-old who also wants to go to grad school and go to law school. So just thinking about that money on top of everything else is very stressful, but that aid was definitely very, very helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Amanda pretty much said exactly what I was going to. In terms of Chev, basically, yeah, I at Pell and I had 2 or 3 state grants. How that works is Chev gives out funds based proportional to how many need-based students it serves with different institutions, and then it's up to the institution's discretion how they distribute those funds. And I believe now they're working with some sort of national surveying agency to figure out an equitable formula to figure out how much institutions are investing, how much return there is, and then accordingly award more or less financial aid. But it's up to the institution about how they design those grants and how they give them out.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on state grants, or we'll take another question?
State grants are fantastic. They're really helpful. I noticed that Pell alone with Jersey and TAP grants and things like that, another added step, a completely different conversation of like another reason why a lot of us are able to be here. So state grants are also really appreciated.
Thank you. Michelle has a microphone now, so I will not have to translate. Yeah, if we can take another question. No long walk.
Thank you so much for your time and answering our questions. My name is Michael from the UF Federal Relations Office. So I'm a fellow university student myself from Florida. And I would like to ask you, what is your views and perspectives on the dynamic between student loan forgiveness and perhaps the future of the Pell Grants, and whether you think it's fair to, forgive student loans since you guys work so hard to get those scholarships, get the money for your rent in general?
Well, I think I'll start us off and say it certainly is fair for them to get their loans forgiven. You know, there is only a limited amount of money and financial aid given to students, which means that not everyone will get the aid that they need, or they won't get enough of the aid that they need. So, you know, students have said today they have loans that they still need to pay back, even though they receive state and federal grants and work jobs. And so I think that just goes to show that the aid currently available to us from different sources is still not enough for everyone. And so, you know, student loan forgiveness is important to ensure that students are able to go into the workforce and succeed and be able to sustain themselves without having to worry about paying back their education.
I completely agree. I actually had to take out a Sallie Mae private loan, which is not eligible for forgiveness, obviously. And so I don't think that gets in the way, or people who already paid off their loans or anything should get in the way of what the right thing to do is. And I think student loan forgiveness has so many pros and positives for so many students going forward, and people who are, you know, over 40 years old who are still paying off these loans. I have professors and teachers who are still doing that today, and they need that help as well. So just because I'm on private loans or we have lower income and we had to pay through grants and otherwise, I think student loan forgiveness is a really good program, beneficial for the majority of students.
I would agree. I think student loan forgiveness is definitely necessary. A lot of my peers, I was not able to graduate with them and cross the stage in May because they had to drop out for a semester to be able to go to work and pay for college. A lot of students that were exceptional students, fantastic straight A students, but just had to make these sacrifices. Especially now that we're living during a pandemic, we have to recognize that it's not just any time in history. We're living through a pandemic where a lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people, you know, just family-wise, they lost their parents' jobs as well. And so I think that you can definitely do that during a time of a pandemic.
Thank you. We will, any other questions? Yes, we have one right here. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Krista Martinez with the University of California System Office here in Washington, D.C. My question for you is, if we waved the magic wand and we told you that everyone up there is getting a double the Pell Grant today, how would you change your college experience? Like, what would that allow you to do going forward?
I would never need to take out another loan. Even with the Pell Grant and stuff like that, if I ever got university housing or swipes into the dining hall or things like that, that's still that extra payment there. And so I still have to take out loans, even with the help that I get. So if you doubled the program today, I would never have to take out a loan again. And if the program was doubled at the time I entered college, I would never have to take out loans to begin with. But instead, I have a lot to work on after I graduate. So the doubling the program would change the outcomes and the lives of a lot of people.
I think if we doubled the Pell Grant, I would probably actually live on campus. I'm a commuter, and so you have to also pay for campus rent and food meal plan on campus. So I'd probably actually live on campus and have that opportunity to live. But throughout my 4 years of college, I had to commute to college.
I would engage in a lot more extracurriculars. We have something like 200 or 300 clubs at VCU, and I couldn't get that involved just because I was working 2 jobs, trying to pay off school, trying to maintain A's that I need to even think about getting into med school, and that's going to be a whole other headache of getting all of those loans and everything. We talk about COVID isn't just this biological problem. It talks about like supply chain management, it's like vaccine distribution. We talk about zoology, we talk about like economics, all sorts of things. And if we want to prepare students for the future workforce, then we need students who are able to explore these different fields aside from just their major. So that's something that I definitely would have been excited to do, but I wasn't able to because of the pandemic or because of the program.
Any more questions? One more question. This is the last one, last chance. Get in while you can. We have one over here, last one.
Thank you. First of all, thanks so much for your candor and for sharing your stories today. I'm Roger Casey. I'm a retired college president from here in Maryland. And in my experience, one of the hardest offices to find the right people for the staff on a college campus is financial aid office. And there's always lots of turnover in those offices. And we're constantly trying to figure out how to rebuild those offices so that they best serve the needs of our students. Can you give us some advice about your own experience with college financial aid offices, positive, negative, how could we create those offices to better serve students with your needs?
As a peer mentor working with freshmen, the amount of times that I've had freshmen come up to me and just complain about the financial aid office, and being confused, the workers not being helpful, they're not nice to them, they don't tell them where they need to go, how to apply online. I just feel like more transparency from the workers, more help having the workers know a little bit more on how to answer different questions and providing them actual resources, maybe like, oh, we have a question with I would suggest maybe QR codes where they can okay, you need to go to this section, here's a QR code for that. Just because my students, they don't even know that they're why they aren't allowed to go to class. And they're and then they come to me and I see that they owe $5,000 and financial aid lady never told them, never helped them, or never showed them. They didn't even know that they can get TAP. I had a student that owed $5,000 and I looked at the aid that they were receiving and I saw, and I asked them, I said, does your family make money? They said no. I'm you can apply for financial aid. And you just came from the financial aid office and they did not tell you that. So there needs to be more information given out, and just be more patient with the students, because every time that I go there, I feel like I'm bothered. And if you feel like a bother, you don't feel like asking questions, and then you end up owing $10,000 and you end up dropping out of school because you don't want to ask that question. You feel like you revert. So
just one thing that I'll add is that I think, like you said, staffing is a problem, and there's an influx of work that these financial aid offices have, and so unfortunately that is the reality. But we need to do something about that, because we need to make sure that the time it takes to process students' financial aid and things like work study and loans needs to be increased, because I know people who applied to work study jobs, were accepted to those work study jobs, and then were not allowed to begin the work study jobs as soon as they could because financial aid had not finished processing their documents. And so, in order for students to be able to have access to the financial resources that institutions provide to them, the institutions themselves need to be on top of processing and on top of making sure that each student's cases are being completed in a timely manner.
I think that is it for us, but thank you so much for coming, for listening, for your thoughtful questions, and thank you to TICAS for hosting the conversation.
Michelle Streeter with TICAS. Just wanted to thank, on behalf of TICAS, everyone for joining us, and thank our incredible students. Give them one more round of applause. And just wanted to announce there is a photo op and double Pell action on the Senate steps at 10:30. So anyone who would like to join us for that, we're just going to kind of herd cats and wrangle over there. We have a little bit of time in between, but just kind of stick around behind and we can all go up together if you want to be a part of that. So